Now you look at SBF, it's the exact opposite. He went to the perfect elite private high school. Then he went to one of the most prestigious elite private universities.
MIT.
His parents teach governance of all things at one of the most elite liberal institutions in America.
Stanford.
They are in the establishment of the progressive left. And what happened was he took customer funds and all of this money. He made tens of millions of dollars of political donations. He wrapped himself in this blanket of a progressive left-leaning cause called effective altruism. And all of the mainstream media fell for it and embraced him, as well as some politicians, because it met everything that they themselves also bought into.
Yes.
From crypto's very own white knight to washout in less than a week, Sam Bankman-Fried's story is certainly one for the books. Just a month ago, we all believed that SBF was one of the richest founders in the space, operating a massive crypto empire that was too solid to topple, especially not in less than 72 hours. But that was exactly what happened when news of the former billionaire's extremely deplorable business practices came to light. Early last month, CoinDesk leaked the balance sheet of one half of SBF's now bankrupt cryptocurrency empire. The shocking reveal showed that Alameda Research, the trading firm SBF founded in 2017, was dependently intertwined with FTX, its sister company. According to the documents, Alameda had over $14 billion in assets and $8 billion in liabilities. Its assets were chiefly FTT tokens, and its liabilities were mainly loans, which we now know were from FTX client funds. In the weeks that followed that reveal, many other disturbing facts have surfaced about SBF, other top executives of the firms, and their highly unethical business practices. From reports of tampering with and gambling away client funds to highly deplorable accounting practices and questionable drug prescriptions, every new reveal has somehow managed to be more shocking than the previous one. In a recent episode of the All-In podcast, Canadian venture capitalist Chamath Palihapitiya, entrepreneur and investor David Sachs, and Jason Calacanis, internet entrepreneur and podcaster, discussed the FTX collapse, especially how SBF was able to hoodwink millions of investors. They note that SBF's deceit is in multiple folds. First, he sold this image of effective altruism to earn the trust of investors, policymakers, and the media. Then he managed to lose billions of dollars of client funds. Backed by the media, the other villain in this story, SBF is now trying to wriggle his way out of accountability. We will now take you to the insightful discussion between the industry besties. Please watch, like, and share this video. Also, ensure you subscribe to the channel and drop your comments and observations in the comments section. Everything helps with the YouTube algorithm, contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
I can speculate about SBF. I think if there is a strategy here, it is this. He is basically copping to criminal negligence in order to avoid the more serious charges of fraud. And I think, again, if there's a strategy here, it is he saw himself being defined as Bernie Madoff 2.0 in the press. And if that image, which may well be true, cemented around him, then prosecutors would never stop. They would never accept a plea that basically gave him anything less than a Madoff-like sentence, which would be decades in prison, maybe a life sentence. So he is out there doing what lawyers would tell you never to do, which is basically incriminate yourself, create more of a record. But he's doing it to change the public perception, maybe muddy up the public perception, get people thinking that, okay, he, he's admitting he did something wrong, but it wasn't deliberate. It wasn't fraudulent. It was just basically carelessness or sloppiness. And if he succeeds in muddying the waters enough, then maybe the prosecutors will give him a plea deal that allows him to have his life back at some point. I think that would be the crazy like a fox explanation of what's happening. Now, there is, an alternative explanation as well, which is I just think that these types of guys, you could call it, a narcissistic fraudster, they think they can talk their way out of anything. Yeah, the average person is not really used to dealing with one of these personality types who they clearly are smart and they're articulate and they know what to say and they're crafting their words. What they've learned through their life is that if they use the precise magic words with a person, they can pretty much, convince them of anything, get them to do anything. And in particular, I would say investors tend to fall for this, not because investors are dumb, but because investors are so clear about what they're looking for and what they want. They're predictable. Yeah. Like VCs especially, we're looking for the 100x outcome or whatever. So it's easy for this type of personality to construct a story to essentially stroke the erogenous zones of a VC.
Whoa.
Yeah, and sort of trick them. And so there is probably a positive reinforcement loop that gets created in the minds of one of these people and they start to think that they can basically talk their way out of any situation. So I think that would be part of what's going on here. And, if you look at sort of the tactics that he's using to do this, all of a sudden he's trying to portray himself, before this, he was portraying himself as the smartest guy in the room. Now all of a sudden it's this babe in the woods impression where I didn't know, it was my subordinates, I wasn't really in control, that was somebody else.
Better. Yeah.
Right. Each individual decision, he says, looked sensible to him. It's just it all added up to something he didn't anticipate. Like, really? Loaning yourself $1 billion of basically the company's money, which was basically customer money, that seemed reasonable to you. I don't know how you defend that individual decision, and there's many like that. But this is sort of the narrative that he's trying to construct.
What's your take on this? And then Freeberg will
Can I make a comparison to SBF and Trump through the lens of the media? So if you go back to 2016, Donald Trump violated every single establishment bias that these left progressive journalist elites had. And so they basically just attacked. But then you went into the election and there was a very clear data point that said whatever you thought was at best limited, and you missed the tone of the country. Because 50+% of the country held a very different view about this person. And instead of taking a step back and then the left media, the mainstream media, re-underwriting and learning and then saying, you know what, mea culpa, I got this wrong, they just doubled down. And they said, no, it still doesn't meet our priors. And so we're just going to ring fence this problem and we're going to just try to destroy this issue because, we want to control the narrative and by result, we want to control power.
Just after the FTX collapse, the New York Times published a 2,200-word article on SBF, concentrating on insignificant matters like how the former billionaire was sleeping better and playing games. Many articles have also focused more on SBF's political donations and how he managed to screw up so badly. He is now being painted as a young, inexperienced business executive who only made a few bad judgment calls. But Chamath and David Sachs strongly disagree with this perspective.
And now you have this cataclysmic event, a multi-deca-billion-dollar fraud or bankruptcy, millions of customer accounts who are frozen, tens of millions to hundreds of millions to billions of dollars lost and stolen from them. And they refuse to re-underwrite this kid. And the reason is because in order to do so, it's like eating your own tail. And that's why they don't want to do it. And so this is why you have the media basically allowing him to do an apology tour. Now, this is his second time at manipulating them. The first time he was able to manipulate them by basically being one of them. And now he's allowing them and their desire to basically protect themselves so that he can create some kind of a defense for himself. And I just think the whole thing is gross because it misses the entire mood of the nation. This is an enormous financial fraud that was perpetrated on tens of millions of people. And there's no accountability because in order to do so, the media would effectively have to admit that they missed it and they got it wrong, and they refuse to do it. And I think that is the really big problem that nobody is really speaking out about is like, well, if these folks are meant to be the last stop to make sure that there's truth and honesty and transparency in society, and you can't count on them, and in fact, they're just going to reflect their own narrative, what is one supposed to do to learn the truth?
In a way, what you're saying, and then we'll go to you, Freeberg, is this fraud was encased in all the gilded facade that America hates right now.
It reflects the institutional rot of America. It reflects every single aspect of institutional rot that every non-elite talks about all the time, but elites, when they have those labels, will refuse to give up.
And just to add to that, the thing that's missing, I'd say one of the big issues with the institutional rot in our country is the lack of accountability when somebody gets it wrong. We saw this with COVID, right? The health establishment is saying that they want amnesty, and Atlantic Magazine was willing to give it to them. So the point is that this class of people think that when they get it wrong, that they're the experts, but when they get it wrong, there should be no accountability. And so, Chamath, to your point, the media and these institutions are not willing to re-underwrite SBF when he so clearly is a fraudster.
This is how the media reacted to Bernie Madoff in 2008. And here is the reaction Sam Bankman-Fried gets a month after his fraud allegations came to light. What are your thoughts on the media's involvement in the aftermath of the FTX collapse? Please drop your replies and your comments on Sachs and Chamath's observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out our other videos to stay adequately updated on market trends. Thanks for watching.